Let's see if these are going live. Maybe. Just maybe. Okay. Kick us up. YouTube seems to be up. Oh. The volume is up, surely. Let's see. Is Rumble ready? I guess not. Come on, Rumble. Help me out here. There it goes. There it goes. Well. Today is the first day of hurricane season in the Atlantic. It is also the first day of Pride Month, everybody. Apparently, this is being contested on social media as being canceled for the start of White Boy Summer instead. I identify with one of these much more than the other. So, happy first day of White Boy Summer. It has been declared. It has been put off in years past. But it is no longer being put off. It is officially White Boy Summer and hurricane season in the Atlantic. Pride Month is canceled. I hate to break it to you. Or I'm actually thoroughly overjoyed to bring that information to you. I think that's more accurate. Completely overjoyed that we have canceled Pride Month. Had the wrong date on there. That's crazy. But today is Monday, June 1st, 2026. This is episode number 117 of Addressing the Issues. Welcome back. Hope everybody had a great weekend. And welcome to the start of White Boy Summer, I guess. We got a lot to cover today. This weekend had plenty in store for us, particularly with Middle Eastern developments into today. Developments which are still ongoing, mostly good news, surprisingly. There's some bad mixed in, obviously, as there always is in the Middle East, but surprisingly mostly good news today. But we'll start off with the beginning of the weekend, where tit-for-tat attacks continued between the United States and Iran. And this happened as ceasefire negotiations between the U.S. and Iran all but fell apart today. But there are some silver linings in what's going on there. Starting everything off, an American MQ-1 drone was shot down by Iran in international waters over the weekend. This sparked everything that came afterwards. The U.S. responded with an attack of their own in Garuk and Keshem Island. It's targeted the air defense, a ground control station, and 2 attack drones U.S. forces claimed were threatening ships in the region, according to the Associated Press. Iranian state media also claimed that U.S. forces targeted a telecommunications tower, seemingly possibly referring to the ground control station, which the U.S. claimed itself targeted. Overlapping infrastructure there, more than likely. But as a result of this, Iran retaliated by launching a missile attack of their own towards U.S. forces in Kuwait this morning. The U.S. claims it shot down all incoming missiles on U.S. forces in Kuwait. One of the missiles used during the attack was shown on Iranian state media before it was launched. It read, "Until the last American soldier leaves the region," with a depiction of Donald Trump's face, apparently battered and bruised. that should tell you a little bit about the sentiment of Iran currently. The U.S. also struck the engine room of a Gambian-flagged cargo ship, the Leon Star, with a missile. This was today as well, as it was attempting to break the U.S. blockade of Iranian ports. So they got a missile to the engine room. In retaliation to this, the IRGC has claimed responsibility for its response by striking the MSC Saritska 5 with a cruise missile of its own. So just lots and lots of tit for tat between the U.S. and Iran currently. We'll get on to a little bit more with that later. But over this same time frame, the weekend, we can also look at what Israel was doing in southern Lebanon, which we have also more news on that later as well. Over the weekend, Israel used white phosphorus bombs in civilian areas in the village of Arnoun, Nabatea, Lebanon. White phosphorus munitions bombs are illegal according to the UN War Crimes Treaty. These are non-allowed munitions, much like the cluster bombs, which were, I have no other words but cried about by Israel during the conflicts between Iran themselves and Lebanon. It seems like no side has any sustenance to argue about war crimes when both sides are doing them. Now, what is a war crime? How do you enforce one? That's up in the air as well. We haven't seen anybody be prosecuted for a war crime, or at least it be enforced, since Germany in World War II. I mean, maybe there's been more since. That's the most recent one I can think of, the most prominent case. But since then, war crimes are rarely acted upon. I guess there was Saddam Hussein in Iraq. But yeah, rarely does anybody face any justice for war crimes. And when both sides are doing it to one another, with Israel launching cluster bombs and white phosphorus, and then the Iranian axis doing the same with cluster bombs, it's like, do you have any ground to stand on when you're calling out war crimes while doing them yourself, but indiscriminately bombing civilian areas with white phosphorus? While in the background, you have the Beaufort Castle, which was captured by Israel over the weekend, which is in southern Lebanon, after Israel bombed a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Israel would then raise its flag over the Crusader fortress built by Fulk, the king of Jerusalem, during the Kingdom of Jerusalem, relating to the Christian Crusades. Now, the Israeli flag is being flown over the same fort built by the Crusaders, which I don't know how I feel about this, especially after the shelling of a UNESCO World Heritage Site. It's giving me flashbacks of the tactics of ISIS used in their caliphate in Iraq and Syria. Like, during their height, they were destroying the Pearl of the Desert, Hatra, Nimrud, and Assur and Nineveh. Does anybody remember this? Destroying UNESCO World Heritage Sites to prove a point of their power. That's a lot. It looks a lot like this. I think it's only fair to have these same judgments over very similar actions, or at least very similar judgments over very similar actions. Then you have the city of Tyre, which is a Christian heritage city for over 2,000 years now, for I guess 2,000 years now roughly, being bombed despite it being a city very close to Christians in the region. a stronghold since the days of Christ, and now it is being indiscriminately bombed by Israel. So, how's that for your Judeo-Christian values? Not good, not a good look. If you are a Christian, being on the side of the people bombing the Christians, probably not a good look. Probably not something you should be proud of as a Christian. Surely, not any war, more than likely, should you be proud of as a Christian. But that's here nor there. We've apparently entirely lost that tenet of our faith, that we probably shouldn't be indiscriminately murdering people, but that has been lost in the era of Judeo-Christian values and just turns into hating someone for being Muslim generally. That is the commonality in Judeo-Christian values, is just hating Muslims. It's like, why? You could easily turn that into any other religion. I mean, not that you should, but it's like, why is this like a tenet of faith these days, is you have to hate Muslims? It's like, you're supposed to love everybody. Last time I checked, maybe I'm missing a part of the Bible that says go after the Muslims for their bloodline, like a blood libel, but I must have missed that part. I think we're supposed to love everyone and probably not indiscriminately bomb Christians in the city of Tyre. Probably not supposed to use white phosphorus munitions in Christian villages, or at least not be promoting that, contributing to it. That's how I feel, at least, given my understanding. Then we move on to today. Retired Army Colonel Douglas McGregor said that claimed that Iran will suspend all diplomatic communication and messages with the United States, and has now told residents of northern Israel to evacuate. This is what I was going on about earlier with the collapse of negotiations with Iran. They were going downhill since last week, the end of last week. Over the weekend, they got no better. And then these tit-for-tat strikes have resulted in Iran claiming that they will stop all diplomatic communication. When President Trump was informed of the cessation of diplomatic communication, he said to U.S. media, "I haven't heard that. I don't know if that's true. If it is, it'll be a good thing. We've been talking a lot, perhaps too much, but it doesn't mean we're going to start dropping bombs. We'll go silent for a while. It could be a long time. We'll just keep the blockade. They're losing a fortune over there." So, if you listen to what he directly said, it won't go straight into another round of bombing. It won't go straight into a boots on the ground invasion. But it will continue said blockade, which has been a huge contention point for both sides, whether it be destroying ships trying to transit the Strait of Hormuz or keeping a blockade around the country of Iran, ensuring that no ships go in and out of port. But it seems, we're continuing along this mostly Cold War style, which I suspected about a month ago that we'll never really get an agreement because both sides are too far apart, but we'll continue to try and hurt each other like below the threshold of war. And that seems to be what's been going on over the weekend. He also reported as of 3:30 that there were currently 4 U.S. air tankers flanked by fighter jets now near the Strait of Hormuz, meaning that can escalate at any point. That's a lot of refueling capabilities. And alongside fighter jets, obviously one for defense, but can easily be used as a weapon of attack. That's something to keep in your conscience currently, because any attack at one of those will likely result in direct attacks on Iran, possibly reopening hostilities fully. But as of right now, I'm checking, it seems that nothing has happened in regards to that. It could just be a show of force, gunboat diplomacy style, just saying, hey, we've got all this up. We could do it if we wanted to. You should probably cave. But that is basically what's going on right now. It is a very tense ceasefire currently between both the U.S. and Iran, with apparently negotiations being shut off altogether. And now both sides have not only used tit for tat attack tactics, but there's now a U.S. show of force in the region, meaning, anything can really happen. That's how this whole thing is right now. It's a Cold War, basically. Anything could really happen. There could be nothing that happens, and then just one mistake, and it's all out conflict between the two. So that's where we sit right now, today, with Iran. There's also been these contrasting reports between U.S. and Iranian media that Iran's president has chosen to step down due to a political takeover by the IRGC. Iran media claims that the president remains in office and will continue his presidential duties, claiming that his resignation is wishful thinking by Western media. I guess that is still developing. It seems that he is, at least as of now, continuing his role. He may have filed a resignation, sent it in, but at least he is still acting as the president, at least according to Iranian sources currently. So maybe he did, maybe he was convinced not to once he turned it in. But it's kind of hard to get news out of there. It's only Western sources reporting that he indeed resigned, with sources in the Middle East saying that he continues. Now, in the fog of war, which one do you trust? I think it's probably somewhere in the middle and somewhere in the gray area. Whether he resigned fully and is quit already, probably not. Whether he will continue for forever, or at least until the next election, probably not. I think it's some combination of the middle and probably a little bit of convincing to say, hey, you're still the face of this for right now. We'll find somebody in the near future. That's what it looks like to me. Then we'll move on. There was a phone call today, multiple phone calls regarding all of this in the Middle East, which seemingly proved effective, proved useful. President Donald Trump posted on Truth Social not long ago, I believe it's like an hour, maybe 2 hours ago. It says, I had a very productive call with Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu of Israel, and there will be no troops going to Beirut, and any troops that are on their way have already been turned back. Likewise, through highly placed representatives, I had a very good call with Hezbollah, and they agreed that all shooting will stop, that Israel will not attack them, and they will not attack Israel. President Donald J. Trump. In the same little bit of time, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu posts on X. It reads, translated from Hebrew, of course, it says, tonight I spoke with President Trump and told him that if Hezbollah does not cease attacking our cities and citizens, Israel will attack terror targets in Beirut. This stance of ours remains unchanged. In parallel, the IDF will continue to operate as planned in southern Lebanon. Meaning, they've only really stopped the plans of going into Beirut. This continues on in southern Lebanon. Very differing statement, or a very differing statement than what President Trump said, that the shooting will stop. All shooting will stop. Keyword all. Benjamin Netanyahu says that it will continue in southern Lebanon. So very different things between all and part. But it seems notably this is only pertaining to troops in Beirut, as millions of citizens have already been forced to evacuate Beirut due to bombing, although that seemingly has stopped since the phone call between the two. And then roughly an hour later, so I guess this was about an hour ago, the first one was 2 hours ago of these statements, Lebanese officials have claimed that they received confirmation that Hezbollah would cease strikes on Israel as a result of this agreement brokered by President Trump and Secretary of State Marco Rubio with the Lebanese president, and that this was directly related to the phone call between President Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu, where Trump probably said that all shooting will stop, like he said on his post, while Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says that it will stop in the north but not in southern Lebanon. The Lebanese presidency released a statement on X, translated from Arabic. It says, a statement issued by the Lebanese embassy in Washington. In the context of the efforts exerted by the Lebanese state to preserve stability and spare Lebanon further escalation, and in the wake of the call that took place between the President of the Republic, General Joseph Aoun, and U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, the Lebanese authorities received confirmation of Hezbollah's agreement to the U.S. proposal, which calls for a reciprocal cessation of attacks. Under the proposed agreement, Israeli strikes on Beirut's southern suburbs would cease in exchange for Hezbollah's refraining from carrying out attacks against Israel, with the ceasefire framework to be expanded to encompass all Lebanese territories. Later, President Donald Trump held a call with Lebanon's ambassador to the United States, Nada Mawad, and informed her that he had obtained the approval of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu for the proposed arrangement. Ambassador Mawad relayed the outcomes of the discussions to President Aoun, who in turn notified Hezbollah of them. The scheduled negotiation meetings on Tuesday and Wednesday are set to convene to discuss the progress and build upon it. Now, what progress was truly made other than cessation, something, of strikes in the north of Lebanon, while the agreement is the entirety of Lebanon, meaning, is this going to work out until tomorrow? That's a completely different question. It seems that two parties in this three-party agreement all agree that all strikes will stop, and one party says that we'll stop about half of them, but the other half will continue until our meeting tomorrow and Wednesday. I don't think that this is, the perfect way to set the stage for a meeting the next day. It's like, yeah, we'll do what we want, although we apparently agreed to something else. Probably not the most productive way to negotiate, but this is negotiations in the Middle East. But yeah, apparently, even though two sides agreed on all strikes will stop, one side says that it will continue doing what it wants, where it wants, and we're led to believe that, somehow the other two parties are going to be okay with this. Well, one party, the U.S., will be, obviously. Now, the Lebanese and Hezbollah, probably a completely different question. They're probably going to be rather frustrated that they're continuing to be attacked, even though said that all this would stop leading into negotiations tomorrow. They were told that they had to cease attacks on Israel, yet they are still being attacked in Lebanon. So I don't know how this is going to work out. I think it's safe to assume that when two sides don't agree to, I guess, a even ceasefire, meaning nobody does anything, that it's probably not going to work out and hostilities probably will continue. I really don't expect Hezbollah to just take a night of fire from Israel, just accept that this is their life without defending themselves. I think that is an unfair assumption. But that's where we are currently after the weekend with Iran, the United States, Israel, and Lebanon. I guess also we'll throw in a little bit of Kuwait in there as missiles were shot down over Kuwait. And it's also been claimed that Qatar played a hand in these negotiations, which it's not been completely stated what their role was between the negotiations between Lebanon and Israel. It's just being claimed that they had a hand in arranging this ceasefire before scheduled negotiations tomorrow and Wednesday. So it seems like everyone is involved in this in the Middle East. Yeah, that's where we sit right now. I can check real quick before we move on and see if there's been any developments in fighting between the Middle East region. But it seems that a major strike was stopped on Beirut tonight. However, attacks on southern Lebanon, including white phosphorus, will likely continue through the night. So that's all I'm picking up for right now. We'll check back one more time before the end of the show today. Yeah. Article about how President Trump says he got all shooting to stop, Benjamin Netanyahu says, well, we're just going to do it in the South. Really stellar listener there. Great dude to negotiate with, honestly. That moves us on to the National Defense Authorization Act for next year, which was released. And it's got some interesting stuff in it. It has Section 224, which pertains to integrate and or synchronize the U.S. and Israeli militaries. Now, how alarming is this? Well, some people say that this is quite possibly the end of the American empire. Others think that it's just information sharing. I think, once again, the answer lies in the gray area. Probably a little bit more on the side of integration and synchronization of the two militaries. But some provisions in this bill relate to sharing bilateral defense and technology research, development, testing, evaluation, integration, and industrial cooperation at Section 224. Other parts include the extension of War Reserve stockpile authority for Israel, meaning that they would be able to stockpile more U.S. munitions for war that we would probably pay for, of course, because how else would that work? And then you have the United States-Israel subterranean cooperation, which is to locate and basically tunnel location technologies, very prevalent for Israel, possibly prevalent for the U.S. on the southern border with narco-terror activities. And you also have the United States-Israel cooperation to counter unmanned systems in all warfighting domains, meaning likely drones, air drones, and sea drones, the ones that are under the water. They're looking at ways to counter those together, sharing technology. But if I can find it, let me go back and find section 224, if I can. I had it pulled up. Some of these are quite concerning. So part of this United States-Israel Defense Technology Cooperation Initiative, Part 1 or Section 1, is identifying jointly developed or Israeli origin technologies with operational utility for potential integration into United States systems and programs of record. If you're aware of the backdoors which Israel puts in its technology, this should be concerning to you. Section 2, ensuring collaborative research initiatives involving government, private sector, and academic institutions in the United States and Israel is done in a manner that protects sensitive technology and information and the national security interests of the United States and Israel. I don't trust the wording on that, especially given what Chinese have been able to do by infiltrating our universities. And you also have the NUMEC affair? Is that the one where Israel stole a whole bunch of uranium from the U.S.? It was the Apollo affair, if I'm not mistaken. Which one was the NUMEC affair? That could be even... Yeah, NUMEC Apollo affair. They're both the same thing. Yeah, when Israel stole U.S. technology to create their nuclear weapons stockpile, which we still don't identify as being a thing even, rather concerning. We'll move on to Section 3, facilitating the transition of technologies from research and development into procurement and acquisition pathways, meaning we'll be paying for all of it. Establishing frameworks for joint ventures, licensing agreements, and United States-based co-production or manufacturing partnerships with Israeli industry. So we'll be producing their stuff here for our use. I guess that's neat. Coordinating with relevant Department of Defense components, including the Irregular Warfare Technical Support Directorate, Capability Development and Innovation Divisions, the Undersecretary of Defense for Research and Engineering, the Defense Innovation Unit, the United States-Israel Operations Technology Working Group, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, DARPA, the ones with the top secret stuff, UFOs even, genius, the Missile Defense Agency, the United States Space Command, the military departments, and other Department of Defense entities as appropriate to align efforts and avoid duplication. And promoting, this is Section 6 now, promoting joint training exercises and information sharing mechanisms to enhance operational readiness to deploy jointly developed technologies. We're integrating. That's what this reads as. The U.S. will be integrating militaries with Israel, everything from production to use of capabilities. And we get on to Part B. It says cooperative efforts. The synchronized or cooperative efforts under subsection A may be carried out through the following domains. 1. Counter unmanned systems, including aerial, maritime, and ground platforms. 2. Anti-tunneling and subterranean threats. 3. Missile and air defense technologies. 4. Artificial intelligence, quantum, machine learning, and autonomous systems. That one's probably not good at all. 5. Directed energy and advanced sensing. The space lasers. Not genius once again. 6. Cyber defense, electronic warfare, and digital resilience. We do not want to partner with them on cyber defense because it will have a backdoor. and they will be getting in. It's that simple. It's how it always works. Biotechnology, biomanufacturing, and medical defense. Let's create some Wuhan labs with them. Genius. Network integration, data fusion, and contested logistics. Let's just use the same networks. Let's just all be under one network. Genius. Defense industrial-based cooperation, manufacturing, and co-production. Meaning if Israel is producing a component necessary for one of our technologies and we outsource it there and they decide, hey, we don't want to give it to you anymore, we can no longer produce these things that we will need for our own defense. Once again, genius. 10. Other emerging technologies as jointly agreed by the United States and Israel. I don't even want to know what's emerging. I don't even want to know. But yeah, it seems our militaries are being fully integrated. I mean, that's what this is. From the top down, from production to use of production to sharing of technologies, fully integrated. And I don't want to even know what that means for our future relations with other nations. I don't. We needed to decouple years ago. And now, I mean, does anybody remember George Washington's farewell address? The first president of the United States. I believe it was 1997, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe that's wrong. Let's check. George Washington farewell address. 1996. My mistake. I was a year off. In his farewell address, he talks about no foreign entanglements. He is rolling over in his grave right now saying this. Like when he warned that the U.S. should have no foreign entanglements, I don't think he ever thought that we would have a foreign entanglement so deep up our ass it can see the light from out of her mouth. I mean, that is how deep this goes. It is all the way through. And it's not going to work out in our favor. I can tell you that. Not even interrelationally is it going to work out in our favor. It's entirely lopsided. And we're going to get abused like we have been for the last 20-something years. And actually, since the founding of Israel, with the New Mecca affair, we're going to be... Did I say 1996? 1796. I'm sorry. Had a stroke, I guess. But no, this is an entanglement beyond the pale. And it's going to negatively affect us in the first place, as technologies will be stolen like they have been by Israel from the U.S. since its inception. And then we're going to have to deal with the repercussions of being so deeply entrenched with a nation that nobody even around the world likes. Nobody. I mean, their relations with every nation are terrible, and we're entwining ourselves right into that. And I don't know that we need any more bad PR here. I think we should probably try and clean it up in general. But allowing backdoors into our technologies, sharing technologies that we probably shouldn't be sharing, and then rewarding Israel for stealing from us so much in the past, including a nuclear weapon, likely chemical weapons programs. It's not a good idea to be this entangled with a foreign nation. And our country's first president warned against this. And what have we done since? Well, we've entangled ourselves, particularly in the last, since World War II, with really bad friends. We need better friends. But through this, what are we going to get? Well, we're going to lose technology, we're going to give it away, and we're going to pay for it all, and then be surprised at the end of it when it's used to balkanize our nation. Like, we are going to be balkanized by Israel over this. That's what they're doing right now with our politics, our media. And then once we are balkanized, we'll be separated in like 10 states and there are 10 different countries, and nothing will ever be the same. But this is the perfect backdoor into our military to absolutely balkanize us by running us out of money and putting Americans against one another. That's what the result of this will be. I can see it now. And maybe we don't get balkanized. Maybe we just get ran so far into the ground in debt that we're not even financially solvent anymore, even less so than we currently are. But this is the result. I mean, it seems we have completely sold out our nation to Israel. And there's no excuse for that. We were warned over 200 years ago what the result of this would be. And nobody ever listened. Nobody ever listened. It's like the founding fathers were rather wise people. Like, go back and read Common Sense by Thomas Paine. Not one of the new interpretations of a neocon of what Common Sense by Thomas Paine was. Read the original one. It's on audiobook, I believe, even on Spotify. Listen to it. Listen to it in the car. I think it takes like an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours. Listen to it, because you could apply any bit of it to today, and it's like, wow, something's gone wrong here in America. Something's gone wrong. We refused to listen to the people who made this nation, made this once great nation, and now we're going against every single thing that they warned against. Every single thing. Do not get into foreign entanglements. And then Thomas Paine, Common Sense, when you're being taxed and it's not representing you, what do? It's like there was something written about this in the Constitution. Whether Americans are willing to act on that, completely separate question, completely separate issue. But our government no longer serves us. It is serving a foreign nation. And you should be upset by that. You should be thoroughly upset by that. We'll move on. We've got a few other smaller stories. Some I couldn't, focus as much on given the developments from today within the Middle East, with some ceasefires being successful, other ones falling apart, tit-for-tat attacks between the U.S. and Iran, and another great misunderstanding between the United States, Israel, and whoever we're at war with. But yeah, we'll move on. We'll move on to some other interesting stories. So, Greg Bovino, possibly a huge fan of the show, went on the record this weekend and called for the White House to change its goals to deport 100 million illegal immigrants, the same number I claim should be the target on Friday. Must be a big fan. Shout out, Greg. You're an American hero. Too bad they got rid of you because they were scared of optics and public relations for enforcing the law. Real Americans appreciate your service. But huge fan of the show, apparently. I say 100, he says 100. Great minds think alike? Maybe. Fan of the show? Possibly. Probably not. Possibly, though. Greg, if you're watching, shout out to you. In other news, you've got President Trump getting fined a whopping $200 after being months late to report a between $5 and $25 million stock transaction or transactions, with one of these stocks being Nvidia rising roughly 2.5% after the trades. meaning he lost a minuscule, oh no,